Have you ever just completely lost your cool over something tiny, and then like a second later, you're standing there wondering, what on earth just happened? Well, today we're going to dive into that exact moment, that feeling when your emotions seem to totally hijack your brain, and we're going to ask a really big question. How much control do we actually have? So to get started, let's talk about something we've all been through, that good old-fashioned emotional overreaction. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Maybe a coworker makes a small comment or your partner leaves a dish in the sink and boom, you erupt with this intensity that honestly surprises even you. And then just as fast as it came, the regret floods in. What was that all about? That feeling, it's got this perfect storm of three things. First, it's immediate, like 0 to 60 in a nanosecond. Second, it's overwhelming. It feels like a giant wave just crashed over you and you're completely submerged. And third, it's totally disproportionate. We're talking using a nuclear bomb to deal with a mouse. This isn't just you being in a bad mood. It's a very specific thing happening inside your brain. And this event, it has a name, the amygdala hijack. The term was made famous by the psychologist Daniel Goleman in his incredible book, Emotional Intelligence. He uses it to describe what happens when your amygdala, this tiny almond-shaped part of your brain, thinks it sees a major threat. And I mean any threat, whether it's real or just perceived, and it pulls the emergency alarm. So how does this hijack actually happen? I mean, how does one little part of the brain take over the whole show? Well, to understand that, we need to look at a simple model of your brain's wiring. Think of it like two different roads information can take. Okay, so let's follow a signal on its journey. Imagine there's a sudden loud noise. All that sensory info, what you hear, what you see, it all goes to this central relay station in your brain called the thalamus. Now, the thalamus is a great multitasker. It immediately sends a quick and dirty signal down the fast path, straight to your amygdala, your brain's security alarm. At the exact same time, it sends a more detailed, high-resolution signal up the slow path to your neocortex, which is your rational thinking brain. But here's the kicker. The amygdala gets the message first. It can sound the alarm and trigger a reaction milliseconds before your thinking brain even has a clue what's really going on. So this really breaks it down into two competing systems, right? On one side, you've got the emotional brain. It's running on that super fast, low-res path. It's totally automatic, super impulsive, and it's what triggers that primal fight, flight, or freeze response. It basically acts first and asks questions later, if ever. Then on the other side, you have the rational brain. It's taking the scenic route, that slower, more considered path. This is the part of you that thinks twice, that logically assesses the situation and figures out, hey, was that a tiger or just my cat knocking over a lamp? And this quote from Goleman himself just nails the sheer speed of it all. This whole emotional response system, it's designed for one thing, survival. Its only job is to ask, do I eat it or does it eat me? And it is so good at its job that it can seize control of your entire brain before your rational mind even has a chance to boot up. But what happens when that security alarm gets stuck in the on position? What happens when the hijacking isn't just a brief one-off event, but a constant humming state of high alert? Well, that's when we start to move into the territory of anxiety. Now, this is so important to get. The idea that anxiety is just all in your head is just wrong. It's so misleading. As the Mayo Clinic points out, your brain is your body's command center. And when that command center is hijacked by anxiety, it can create these powerful, sometimes terrifying physical sensations that feel just as real as a heart attack or a stroke, because to your body, they are real. Mentally, this state of constant alert is just exhausting. That feeling of impending doom, that's not just a vague worry. That's your brain's threat detection system cranked up to 11, 24/7. And the trouble concentrating? Well, yeah, that happens because your brain is dedicating almost all of its processing power to scanning for danger, leaving very little bandwidth for anything else. And of course, your body just follows the brain's panicked orders. Your heart races to pump blood for a fight that never comes. You start breathing fast to get more oxygen for an escape you don't need to make. Being in this constant state of emergency readiness is physically draining. It leads to weakness, fatigue, sleep problems, you name it. And this quote I found from a Reddit user just captures the lived experience so perfectly. When your brain gets used to living at this level of hypervigilance, that becomes your new normal. And when that happens, silence and calm don't feel peaceful anymore. They feel wrong, unsettling. It's like the eerie quiet in a horror movie right before the monster jumps out. Your own brain starts to treat the feeling of relaxation as a threat. Okay, so we've got this very neat and tidy story, right? A rogue amygdala, the bad guy, hijacking the good, rational brain. It's a useful model, but is it the whole story? Well, modern neuroscience is starting to suggest that the reality is, frankly, way more complex and a whole lot more interesting. So this brings us to a much more nuanced picture. We're about to move beyond that simple idea of a hijack to see the brain for what it really is, this incredible, complex, dynamic network. And this slide shows that shift in thinking perfectly. I mean, just look at the difference. On the left, that's the simple top-down model we've been talking about. A few clean arrows, looks like a simple flowchart. But on the right, whoa, that's what neuroscientists are actually seeing. A dense, chaotic-looking web of connections going in every direction between dozens of different regions. It is not a one-way street. Right, so the key takeaway here is that your brain isn't organized like a company, with a CEO at the top making all the calls. It's what scientists call a heterarchy. It's a decentralized system with no single boss. Information flows up, down, and sideways, all at the same time, with tons of different regions all influencing each other. So what this really means is that it's less accurate to think of the amygdala hijacking the rest of the brain. It's more like our emotional state emerges from this constant dynamic conversation, or sometimes a shouting match between a whole host of brain regions. The amygdala is a critical player, for sure, but it's part of a very big team, not a lone wolf. And look, understanding the brain as this interconnected, dynamic system isn't just some academic exercise. It fundamentally changes how we think about managing our own emotions. And that brings us to what you might call the brain's dynamic dance. To actually map this dance, scientists use this really fascinating concept called neural trajectories. Okay, so think of it like this. It's like a GPS for your brain's overall state. At any given moment, the total pattern of activity in your brain can be represented by a single dot on a map. As your mood and thoughts change, that dot moves, tracing a path or a trajectory. And it turns out different states, like feeling safe versus feeling threatened, create their own distinct, recognizable paths. And you can literally see it right here. This is a visualization of those trajectories from a brain scan study. You can see how the brain's overall activity follows one clear path when a person is in a safe state and a completely different, distinct path when they're in a threat state. These aren't just random squiggles, they are consistent, signature patterns of the brain. So, let's be clear. The amygdala hijack model, it's a fantastic entry point. It's a powerful and useful metaphor to help us get a handle on what's happening. But knowing that our brain states are these complex, dynamic trajectories, well, that's where the real power for change lies. Because now we're not just trying to stop a single hijacker, we're trying to gently guide the entire system, the entire dance, onto a more beneficial path. And this is how we can actually do it. The pioneering neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux explains that things like therapy are basically a form of emotional relearning. You are literally training your neocortex, that thinking brain, to have a stronger, more calming influence within that dynamic network. You're learning over time to suppress that immediate, reflexive urge to act. Which brings us all the way back to our opening question, but now with a totally new perspective. If our emotional responses aren't just an inevitable hijack by one rogue part of the brain, but are actually the result of this complex, dynamic dance across our entire brain, a dance that we can learn to influence, to guide, and to shape, then that poses one final, pretty powerful question. Who's really leading?